That first Easter morning, we may imagine, begins with an overwhelming emptiness. Not an empty tomb as yet, that has yet to be discovered, but that emptiness, all too familiar to us, which accompanies life's greatest losses. The loss of a loved one, the loss of a dream, the loss of a job, the loss of a purpose. In the case of Jesus' disciples, in point of fact, they had just lost all of these things at once, only 2 days before. They had seen their beloved friend and teacher and mentor suffer and die cruelly as no one ever should. Now, like that, he was gone. And gone with him was their dream of a messianic kingdom. Gone now the purpose that they had given their lives to over the last several years. Gone also the job of being his followers and disciples. And so we find them empty at Easter's dawn, just as we would be. Some are still sleeping like the dead because sleep came hard last night. Others are perhaps talking quietly among themselves, sharing tears, sharing guilt and grief, sharing memories. You remember that day when we were fishing, Simon? The day that we first met him. Do I remember? I was just thinking about it. We were casting our nets, and here he came saying, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." And something about the way he said it made you know. It was like a call that you'd been waiting for all your life. There was no time for your head to say no because your heart had already said yes, and your feet were following your heart. I followed without hesitation. I can't say I expected it to end like this, though. Would you have followed if you had known, Simon? Yes, even if I had known. It was a calling, after all, just as you felt. And some callings come with a cost, but not heeding them has a cost as well. Look at all we would have missed, how we've changed, all we've seen and felt and learned. Look at the lives we touched. Look at the ways we were touched in return. He did make us fish for people, didn't he? He did make us fishers of people. And so the conversation goes, but all of the focus is on the past. We were fishers of people. Wasn't it glorious? Wasn't it grand? Wasn't following him amazing? But now I guess we'll go back to fishing for fish. When you come to a dead end, and that's where we are, a dead end, you turn around and go back the way you came. Meanwhile, as this conversation about the past is taking place, the present finds three women, James's mother Mary, and Mary Magdalene, and Salome, making their way to the tomb. Again, there's no expectation among these three that the tomb will be empty. Rather, the women are carrying spices so that they may anoint Jesus' body, a holy and grief-filled task left undone the previous day because it was the Sabbath. The stone at the tomb's entrance is obstacle enough in the women's minds. They do not even imagine that death itself could be overcome. The first Easter begins, in other words, without great expectation. But then the women come to the tomb, and the stone is unexpectedly rolled back, and there is no death to be found. Only newness, only miracle, only life. The women receive that familiar message, now celebrated across the centuries and celebrated by us again today. Do not be amazed. You seek Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here. And the story might end right there, mightn't it? That's the way Hollywood has trained us, to end with the happy ending. The disciples saw, they were amazed, they celebrated. They went to Easter brunch and vowed to come back next year at the same time and celebrate again. Except, of course, that there's more to the Easter message than he is risen. The rest of the message is, go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going before you to Galilee, which is another way of saying, once again, follow me. Again, just as they did before, the disciples receive an invitation to be answered with the heart and with the feet. And now is as good a time as any to observe, I suppose, what the resurrection does not do. It does not make the following easy. It doesn't take away the further sacrifices that Jesus' disciples are going to be called to make. It doesn't take away the scorn and rejection and ridicule that they will face. It doesn't change the fact that some of them will suffer or die for the faith that they will seek to share with the world. It doesn't do any of those things. But it does take away the emptiness. The purposelessness is gone. The sense of despair is gone. Their questions about whether life has meaning are now gone, all because Christ has risen and the call to follow is renewed. Friends, I want to suggest that the same is true for us. If we hear that second part of Easter's message, not just that he is risen, but also the follow me bit, it has the power to take away our emptiness as well. Because we are called. We may be called to do some challenging things. The call is life-changing. Follow me, you see, means live as I live and do as I have shown you to do. Get out there in the world, or at least your little slice of the world, and start spreading forgiveness, perhaps beginning where you least want to begin. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Start comforting the afflicted. Hold and heal the hurting ones. Start turning the other cheek. Love your enemy. Start touching the unlovely. Touch the lives of lepers. Stop making judgments and start building bridges. Do the work of reconciliation. Carry my light to the world. Do these things as hard as they are, and the world will be changed, and you will be changed as well. And as we hear and heed his call to do these things, we touch people, and we are touched and shaped by people, and our lives and theirs are enriched beyond measure. The words that greet us at the empty tomb are not lace glove and Easter bonnet words. They are work glove and bandana words. Follow me. The message of the empty tomb is twofold. Those words of profoundest comfort, he is risen, serve notice that sin and separation and death and defeat do not have ultimate power in God's kingdom. Those words give us courage in the very midst of all of these things to hear and heed the second message of follow me. And either message of itself is insufficient. Take one half alone, and you go the way of a triumphalism that asks nothing of us. Take the other half alone, and you go the way of a drudging discipleship that is filled with more duty than joy. But take them together, he is risen, and follow me. Well, that's a message that has the power of miracle. We have experienced that combined message of new life and new calling here at Grace Presbyterian, particularly in this last year of pandemic. A year ago, we found ourselves anxious, uncertain, afraid of the future, unable to gather, to engage in any of our familiar rituals or routines. To our wonderment, in the midst of that, despite that, we discovered unexpected life. We moved worship online and discovered that our congregation was no longer confined to a neighborhood in Springfield, but instead stretched to worshiping, working, participating members from across the nation and around the world. We weren't less, we were somehow more. Faced with the loss of our Sunday school classes, We engaged in studies that were not one morning a week, but throughout the week, engaging hard topics like racism and prejudice, sacrificial stewardship, spiritual growth. Suddenly, we were digging deeper than before. We leaned into the scarcity of pandemic with generosity. Faced with the loss of a beloved annual mission trip to Honduras, we sent $20,000 in aid instead, and a like amount to the homes and the hospitals of Palestine. And in the absence of a gathered crop walk, we surpassed all of our previous endeavors in a virtual crop walk. And in a year when even toilet paper at first felt scarce, we discovered God's abundance drawing out from us unprecedented and generous outreach. What is that but new and resurrected life in the face of death? A year ago, we were a church searching for a message of hope, but we have received far more than that. We have also received a call, and so we find ourselves walking anew and in strange and different ways the path of discipleship. As with those who first received their renewed call, the way forward is not entirely clear. He has simply called us to follow in faith, worshiping and giving and growing, not knowing exactly where faith will lead. The way forward is also not easy. This past year has had its share of blood, sweat, and tears, anxiety, fresh challenges, and big steps beyond our zones of comfort and familiarity. And this pandemic is not over. So the next year, and indeed the years to come, will hold all of those things as well. But our comfort and our challenge reside in this truth. The message at the empty tomb is not, go on without me. Rather, the message is, come, follow me. I will make you fish for people. That makes the miracle of Easter not just a happy ending, but a fruitful beginning. Shall we follow, people of God, and see where Easter leads us next? Amen.